and to save our planet for the next generation, the same as we got in our hands. The main theme of World Construction Forum 2019, Buildings and Infrastructure Resilience, is resilient construction, beginning from climate changes to disaster risk management and facility management. Civil engineering, in general, construction engineering is for sure the most traditional industry, but in the recent time, many changes happened with new technologies and management. Just to say, building information modeling, facility management, and other, which change a lot our everyday work. But given the expected growth of the world population from 7.5 billion to probably 9, we will face with a big problem how to manage construction to be sustainable because of the higher loads. We have to use better technical solutions and also to implement all new technologies that we can cope with this problem, really to provide housing and other infrastructure for all citizens of the world. Each of the topics, 6 topics from energy to facility management, focused on at least one sustainable development goals, opens up dilemmas and brings solution in the direction of resilient construction. This year, however, we also celebrate 100 years of Engineers Chamber and Technical Faculty of the University of Ljubljana, which are important foundations of Slovene statehood. Just to mention, there's the first Slovenian government, 1918, took only 100 days, but it was the first. And one of the ministers was the first secretary of the Chamber of Engineers in Ljubljana. After, you know, that we were starting with the Austro-Hungarian Act on Engineers' Chambers from 1913, but because of the First World War, the establishment of the chamber moved in 1919. The great economic crisis and the Second World War displaced many excellent Slovenian engineers to various parts of the world, where some achieved invaluable successes. And the exhibition you can see outside in the lobby of this beautiful Congress Centrum, which is for sure sustainable because so many years serves to our nation and all international events here. We can see 100 years tradition of Slovenian engineers and all the Slovenian engineers who are working abroad. And we have also publication which finishes with 2 famous Slovenian engineers who made projects in foreign countries, and they got through the international competition approval that the Slovenian engineers are really on a very high level. World Construction Forum 2019, with its themes on the resilient construction of buildings and infrastructure, continues our effort, as I said before, started 2012, on sustainable construction, and in cooperation with many Slovene and international engineering organizations, sets the basis for a permanent internet platform for construction engineering and engineering in general, where all lectures and speeches will be accessible to millions of engineers and other interested public. In addition to a few hundred of participants, we expect, as appointed, around over 700. But this is nothing if you compare with the millions of engineers around the world. We will provide free access to all the lectures, which will be recorded, and also this opening plenary session goes directly via internet to all the world. So we would like also to give opportunity to get lesson for all those who are not able to come because of expensive traveling costs, or they just want to take care for carbon footprint and care for future generation. In a wish for a successful World Construction Forum 2019, I would like to thank our honorary patron, the President of the Republic of Slovenia, His Excellency Mr. Borut Pahor, who is today participating at another event, but he sent us a very promising message that he is supporting us, and he showed this with the honorary patron. Auspices of UNESCO, thank you UNESCO for all your efforts. I put these 17 UNESCO sustainable goals that we will, at least with today's 6, I believe that engineering can work at least more than a half, and we are a very important partner to you to fulfill these goals as you expected. Thank you to the Dean of Faculty of Civil Engineering and Geodesy, Matjaž Mikuš. We did a great job together. We were partners from financial point 50-50, so to deal profit and loss. And the President of World Federation of Engineers, Dr. Marlene Kanga, who made everything this possible because she takes care that we got participants from more than 50 countries. And as I said before, with recorded lectures, we will reach, I believe, almost every place in the world. So thank you, Marlene. Thank you also to all other co-organizers, chairs, speakers, especially keynote speakers. We will have today 4 very well-known keynote speakers. One of them will be my professor. I really appreciate Professor Pfeiffer. And I believe that we can do together a good job. Special thanks goes also to sponsors who made this event possible, and financial, I believe that we will give them back more than they sponsored. So I only wish you a successful forum. Enjoy it, and have a pleasant stay in Ljubljana. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Črtomir Remec. Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, we often proudly say that Slovenia is a beautiful country with a love in the middle of the name. And in this spirit, we can continue with this quote: "Success is no accident. It is hard work, learning, studying, sacrifice, and most of all, love of what you are doing." And nobody knows this better than our host, Professor Matjaž Mikuš, Dean of the Faculty of Civil and Geodetic Engineering of the University of Ljubljana. Welcome, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Dear Mr. Simon Zeitz, the Minister of the Environment and Spatial Planning, dear Dr. Marlene Kanga, the President of the World Federation of Engineering Organizations, dear Miss Ana Luisa Massot-Thompson-Flores, the Director of the UNESCO Regional Bureau for Science and Culture in Europe, and dear Mr. Črtomir Remec, the President of the Slovenian Chamber of Engineers. Dear other distinguished guests, dear colleagues and friends, dear students, ladies and gentlemen, it is my honor, utmost honor and pleasure to address you all here in Cankarjev Dom at the opening ceremony of the World Construction Forum 2019. Yes, I am a forum co-chair. Many thanks were already given by Mr. Črtomir Remec. We jointly do that, so I host you in the name of the Faculty of Civil and Geodetic Engineering and in the name of the University of Ljubljana. It is definitely our privilege to have more than 600 participants in 2 days and coming from 51 countries. And yes, we secured video streaming of this opening ceremony so we could reach really many other engineers around the world. As the host organization, University of Ljubljana, and our predecessor was technical faculty established as the founding member of the University of Ljubljana 100 years ago, yes, we are celebrating the 100th anniversary, and this event is part of our contribution to engineering profession and to activities of the University of Ljubljana and our faculty. We have successfully organized as Faculty of Civil and Geodetic Engineering a similar event to the Engineering Forum 2012 2 years ago in the same Congress Center. It was a 4th World Landslide Forum, so we gained very positive experiences. And even at that time, we hosted more than 600 participants for maybe not the same countries, but yes, from 50 countries. So that was our intention, to jointly organize this event, not just for Slovenian engineers, but for the engineers around the world. It is dedicated to construction, but I think that many messages can be taken to some other engineering professions, or not strictly just construction engineers. I think that, as already mentioned, the support of 2 international organizations was, of course, tremendously important. We may thank the World Federation of Engineering Organizations. They had some meetings before this event. They have supported us, even when discussing what would be the name of the forum, as well as the United Nations Educational, Scientific and Culture organizations for their firm support and personal involvement into preparation of this forum. We are aware about the importance that construction sector is giving for supporting economy in countries and also to increase national competitiveness around the world on one hand. But on the other hand, I think that construction industry, construction engineering, is also important for social well-being and quality of life in changing environment, and of course under the impacts of fast globalization we are facing each day. Therefore, the focus of this forum was intentionally selected that we talk about the construction and building resilience. I think this is a part of societal resilience, and that's why this is the motto of the forum. We believe that for achieving of the already mentioned 17 Sustainable Development Goals proclaimed by United Nations, adequate resilience of existing, already built, as well as planned buildings and infrastructure, including cultural heritage, which is part of our work in these 2 days, is very important. I'm coming from a university. I think that university, as an academic institution, supports continuous engineering capacity building, which starts with the engineering education in primary and secondary schools, which is vital, I think, for successful higher education in the field of engineering and generally technical sciences. And I think is also very important, or paramount even, to boost creative and breakthrough thinking and innovation in the young generation we are trying to get. Of course, this mentioned educational system can be then upgraded by a lifelong capacity building of general population or specifically of professionals and experts in the field of built environment. And proof for that is that there are many engineers from Slovenian Chamber of Engineers being here to learn something and also, of course, to discuss and bring their expertise. So I'm looking forward really to the exchange of your expertise and knowledge. Please ask questions. And you have different competencies, you have different background. This is, I think, important. Construction sector, built environment is a very large topic. But allow me, especially as the faculty dean, that I also, of course, greet warmly university students that have attended this forum, as well as the young engineers from the chamber. We have prepared, of course, also a video footage of all the forum lectures and discussions. This will be freely available on the web after some days after the forum. I think this is a clear contribution to the open educational resources, open learning, and open science. I also hope the 2019 Ljubljana Declaration on Buildings and Infrastructure Resilience, with its short but clear recommendations to be discussed and adopted tomorrow, can be a small yet clear contribution to the world construction sector, how to achieve sustainable development goals. We are also clearly supporting the Sender framework for disaster risk reduction, as well as the Paris Agreement on climate change. Steps towards an active relation of challenges ahead of us in years and decades to come must be combined with determined steps toward adaptation strategies based on new technologies and social discourse. We are part of that. May I wish you at the end very fruitful discussions during the forum, a pleasant stay in Ljubljana and in Slovenia, and please take some memorable moments from this event and from Slovenia to your home. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, the Slovene poet Tone Pavček said, "You are on the earth to see the sun. You are on the earth to follow the sun. You are on the earth to be the sun that shadows always shun." And I believe that knowledge and education are like the sun. Please join me in welcoming Mr. Simon Zeitz, Minister of the Environment and Spatial Planning of the Republic of Slovenia. Welcome, Mr. Minister.
Thank you. Esteemed ladies and gentlemen, construction engineers, and other experts of the construction profession from around the world and from Slovenia. The meeting, such as we are opening today, represents an unique opportunity for the exchange of experiences, good practices, views and positions regarding current issues related to planning and building, as well as more broadly, for instance, through the place and role of the builder in modern society, time and space. The role of builders is increasingly complex. And for this reason, they are called on, if not actually challenged, to create designs by methods which are every day more refined and in line with the demands of clients and users who require increasing smartness from structures. At the same time, every day, design engineers encounter new materials and that offer different and new solutions. Construction engineering is a profession that is directly tied to our living and our working. We could say that at every step it guides and marks our lives. It surprises and inspires us with ever new and increasingly imaginative, often even very bold designs. I believe that in the earlier stages, when complex thought processes give rise to new ideas or concepts, the planners can never be replaced by computers or artificial intelligence. Even though in all later stages of design and project elaboration, they are indispensable tools for any builder. We live in a time that is being shaken up by global social, political, and environmental changes, and new paradigms are being formed for sustainable, oriented coexistence in a multicultural environment. Within Europe, as well as more broadly on the world scale, development trends are leaning towards new, original design approaches and solutions which enable sustainable growth, with maximum consideration given to our limited resources, energy, and scope for recycling. On the global scale, the construction profession has reached a point where practically any architectural and technical construction solution is feasible. The question is simply, does it make sense? And is the economic and environmental price not too high? For this reason, engineering and other related professions are taking a leading role in overall development and progress, within which construction engineering plays a very important role. Only in this way will the profession, which this year celebrates 100 years of organized operation in this area, continue in the future to stand proud and meet eye to eye the coming challenges, and to contribute its share to the overall development and advancement of society. In this light, we are very proud to be holding this forum for the second time in Slovenia, and we see this as a recognition of our construction engineers, the Slovenian Chamber of Engineers, and the Faculty of Civil and Geodetic Engineering. I am honored and delighted to be able to speak to you today at the start of such an important professional meeting, as the World Construction Forum most certainly is. I wish you all the best and thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, Colin Powell once said, "There are no secrets to success. It is the result of preparation, hard work, learning, and training." And now it's my great pleasure and honor to invite onto the stage Dr. Marlene Kanga, President of the World Federation of Engineering Organizations. Welcome in Slovenia. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much. It's a great honor and pleasure to be here today at the opening of this very important forum. Honorable Minister for Environment and Spatial Planning, Mr. Simon Zeitz, Professor Mikos of the University of Ljubljana, Faculty of Civil and Geodetic Engineering, my great friend, Črtomir Remek, who's Executive Vice President of the World Federation of Engineering Organizations and a member of our Executive Board. Dear students, faculty members, delegates, ladies and gentlemen, it's an honor to be here to speak at the opening of this very important forum. I, in fact, attended the first World Engineering Forum in 2012, which in fact was very memorable and which I rated as one of the best, I still rate one of the best that I've ever attended. And I'm sure that this forum will offer no less. The World Federation of Engineering Organizations is really proud to be one of the co-organizers of this very important event, along with the Slovenia Chamber of Engineers, a national member of the Federation, and the University of Ljubljana, under the patronage of UNESCO. On the behalf of the Federation, I would firstly like to congratulate the University of Ljubljana on celebrating 100 years, your centenary, and also the Slovenia Chamber of Engineers also celebrating its centenary. And I look forward to the World Federation of Engineering Organizations working with your organizations for the next 100 years. Think of the contribution we engineers can make for a better world. The World Federation of Engineering Organizations is the peak body for engineering. We have some 100 nations as members, representing more than 30 million engineers. It is the voice of engineering at an international level and promotes the role of engineering in key issues that the world is now facing, especially to advance the goals of sustainable development through engineering. The Federation is recognized in this role by the United Nations and all agencies, including UNESCO. The implementation of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals is a key strategic objective of the Federation. These goals take an integrated approach for future development, combining progress and economic prosperity, social inclusion, and environmental sustainability. This focus recognizes that engineers are at the heart of sustainable development, using their ingenuity to develop and implement solutions that the world so urgently needs to manage its resources, protect our planet, provide basic amenities like water and energy to so many around the world. I'm so delighted that this forum will focus on 6 of these sustainable development goals related to water, to energy, innovation, sustainable cities, and infrastructure, and action against climate change. It's really pleasing to see the diverse topics to be discussed. Experts from every region of the world, in fact 51 countries, will discuss the latest technologies and advanced engineering for the design and development of infrastructure such as roads and tunnels, for the operation and maintenance of these facilities, buildings, and heritage structures. Importantly, the use of energy-efficient technologies on the agenda, critical for sustainable living in increasingly urban populations around the world. The preservation of our cultural heritage and infrastructure that is resilient against natural disasters such as earthquakes and the increasing impact of climate change is also essential. An important theme to be discussed this week is capacity building in engineering, especially in developing countries, and the need for quality education in engineering so that the world has the engineers that it needs to advance the goals for sustainable development. I very much look forward to the presentations and discussions and the many unique opportunities that this forum will present to develop solutions to the challenges we face. The collaborative approach among the international experts here this week and will be attending the forum will be a powerful catalyst to develop the best solutions that the world needs for sustainable development. My very best wishes to all those involved in the forum, and my very sincere thanks to the Slovenia Chamber of Engineers, to the University of Ljubljana, the organizing committees and staff who have given their time and who have made great efforts in organizing this important event. This forum is an opportunity to celebrate the past 100 years and the achievements of engineers in the past, but it's also an opportunity to look ahead and for all us engineers to plan a sustainable future and to create a better world. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And now, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, let's welcome Mrs. Ana Luisa Massot Thompson-Flores, the Director of the UNESCO Regional Bureau for Science and Culture in Europe. Welcome. We are honored to host you on the floor.
Thank you. Honorable Minister of Environment and Spatial Planning, Simon Zeitz, Dr. Zhormek Remek, President of the Slovenian Chamber of Engineers, Professor Matthias Mikos, Dean of the Faculty of Civil and Geodetic Engineering, University of Ljubljana, Dr. Malene Kanga, President of the World Federation of Engineering. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of my colleague, Dr. Peggy Oti Boateng, Director of Science Policy and Capacity Building, it is an honor to address you at the opening of the World Construction Forum 2019. The theme of this year's forum, Buildings and Infrastructure, Resilience from Climate Changes to Disaster Risk and Facility Management, resonates with the needs of society all across the world. Advances in engineering have been central to human progress ever since the invention of the wheel. In the past 150 years in particular, engineering and technology have transformed the world we live in, contributing significantly longer life expectancy and enhanced quality of life for large numbers of the world's population. Sustainable construction is a part of building environment, which is the physical world that has been intentionally created by humans through the application of science and technology in the control and use of forces and materials. Oh, I'm sorry, the screen was moving and I was afraid that it was also reflecting in the background. My apologies. So, as I was saying, physical world has been intentionally created by humans through the application of science and technology in the control and use of forces and materials of nature for the benefit of humanity. It is essential for almost every respect of society, national infrastructure, and economic activity. The building and construction industry plays an important role in sustainable development because it's such a key sector in national economies. The built environment represents a large share of the economic assets of individuals, organizations, and nations. And it is one of the single largest industrial sectors with all the consequential aspects of employment, economic importance, and environmental impact. Proper housing and infrastructures are key elements in determining the quality of life, and it has a significant interface with poverty reduction through the provision of basic services and through the potential to engage the poor in construction, operation, and maintenance activities. Land use and material extraction by the building and construction industry accounts for a very large usage of natural resources. Energy use, liquid and solid waste generation, transport of construction materials, and consumption of hazardous materials are other sources of negative environmental impact from this sector. In OECD countries, buildings are responsible for 25 to 40% of total energy use. In Europe, buildings account for 40 to 50% of energy consumption in society, contributing to significant amounts of carbon dioxide emissions. The post-2015 agenda, also known as the 2030 Agenda, adopted at the United Nations in September 2015, established the Sustainable Development Goals to address poverty reduction, infrastructure development, education, achievement of gender equality and empowerment of women and girls, ensure availability and sustainable management of water and sanitation for all, ensure access to affordable, reliable, sustainable, and modern energy for all, and conserve and sustainably use the oceans, seas, and marine resources for sustainable development. Almost all 17 of these goals relate to science and engineering. Engineers and scientists will continue to play a decisive role in the success of the SDGs. The necessity for environmentally friendly technologies of the future will require the expertise of engineers and scientists. The many goals were mentioned today in the various speeches, and as engineers, you have influence and impact in all of them. But the one that most closely to your hearts would be Goal 9, as you know. Industry, innovation, and infrastructure is the most relevant SDG for engineering, which directly relates to this conference. Sustainable engineering is a key factor in sustainable construction for sustainable community development. However, sustainable engineering is a cross-cutting concept, and it is not the sole responsibility of environmental engineering. There is a need for the incorporation of sustainability and the use of an interdisciplinary approach in the engineering curricula. We need creative, innovative engineer solutions that will help meet the requirements of future communities. And in order to achieve sustainable construction for sustainable community development, we need to build capacity of the community through education, communication and information, science and cultural heritage. These are all sectors of UNESCO. Thus, working with the UNESCO engineering program and through the synergy of the natural science sector, different programs like the Man and the Biosphere Reserves, biodiversity, hydrology division, science education, disaster and risk reduction, climate change, science policy, and capacity building will contribute to the larger objective of a sustainable community worldwide. The engineering program aims to develop concrete projects that will increase the public awareness about the importance of engineering for more sustainable communities, incorporate sustainability and interdisciplinary approaches into engineering curricula, increase the number of engineering students, particularly in less developed countries, and also increase the number of women in engineering. According to a colleague at the UNESCO Doha office, a publication on better buildings stated the following measures that form the basis for more sustainable cities. Implementation of an integrated environment protecting infrastructure for drinking water supply, sewage systems, canalization and waste management, introduction of environmentally friendly energy supply and transportation, the reduction and optimization of management of traffic will lead to improved quality of air, protection under a sustainable zoning plan and management of areas, realization of environmentally friendly and healthy building measures, extensive greening of street spaces and public places, plants having a soothing effect on the climate and in the induction of shade, and finally, adequate housing for everyone. UNESCO endeavors a sustainable future for all. To achieve this, we need all stakeholders to work together. It is imperative that sustainable construction for people follow the construction of sustainably thinking people. I wish you a very successful forum, and hopefully all the solutions in the various working groups will build a better future for all of us. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. With these words, we concluded the opening ceremony, and we will continue with 4 presentations of keynote speakers. First, we invite onto the stage Professor Peter Pfeiffer, who will talk about earthquake-resistant structures. Welcome. We just need a few minutes to find a presentation. And I think everything is prepared. So, Professor Pfeiffer, the floor is yours. Thank you very much.
Okay.
We just need a little help, and I think you can help with. Thank you, and I think that was for good luck.
Good morning, dear colleagues. It's my great pleasure and honor and privilege to be here today and to have this opportunity to speak to this distinguished audience, and I would like to thank very much the organizers for the kind invitation. So the topic of my speech today is earthquake-resistant structures, which are the key element of seismic resilience. And I will start with some data about consequences of natural disasters. According to the data of Munich Reinsurance Company, there, in average, in last decades, in average, about 62,000 people die per year due to natural disasters. And about half of them is due to geophysical events, mostly earthquakes and tsunamis. And in addition, there is a great loss, about, again, in average, $165 billion per year. Of course, we cannot prevent natural hazard, but what we can do, we can mitigate the consequences. And the keyword is resilience. Also, this conference includes the word resilience. This is nowadays a magic word, I would say. You cannot get a research project without putting resilience in the keywords. Unfortunately, in Slovenia, we have not a proper, in Slovenian language, we have not a proper word for resilience. Which would be equivalent to the meaning, according to the Oxford Dictionary, this is the capacity to recover quickly from difficulties. And in the context of disaster management cycle, resilience is the capacity to prevent, to prepare for, to respond to, and to recover from the impacts of disasters. And I would say that the main step here, by far, the main step is prevention. This can be explained by looking at the so-called resilience curve, which shows the quality of infrastructure versus time. In a moment when let's say, earthquake hits, there is a sudden drop in the quality of infrastructure. If the structures are seismic resistant, this drop is small and recovery is quick. If the structures are not resistant, the drop is very large and the recovery is very costly and takes a very long time. So, extreme example is Haiti. As you know, there was an earthquake in 2010 with catastrophic consequences. The magnitude was not so large, it was only 7. But the consequences, death, wounded, homeless, this was catastrophic. And the problem is this was the most destructive earthquake that any country has experienced in terms of the number of fatalities relative to its population. The reason for this was inadequate construction practice due to poverty, lack of professionals in construction industry, and no seismic code. Another example, I would say, on the other end is a developed country, Chile. In the same year, magnitude was much stronger. So magnitude is a logarithmic scale, as you know, and this earthquake was in energy almost 1,000 times as strong regarding the energy. And in spite of this energy, the number of deaths was relatively low compared to the magnitude, but the damage was still extensive. So here we experienced a very good behavior of engineered structures. Some data from taller buildings built in last 20 years before the earthquakes, only 4 buildings collapsed and 50 were to be demolished. So this experience can be followed also after and seen also after other earthquakes. So here is the statistics made after L'Aquila, Italy earthquake. Shown is damage to reinforced concrete buildings. And you can see a clear decrease of damage with increasing year of construction. And same trend can be observed after Kobe earthquake. Again, damage to building was decreasing with increasing year of construction. So this period of construction, they correspond to Japanese codes, different Japanese codes. So what we can see, modern seismic codes are able to prevent more or less collapses of the buildings. So one example from Chile earthquake, in the most hit area, the city of Concepcion, we found a building, a parking garage without any single crack. But unfortunately, in the same city, there was one of these 4 buildings which completely collapsed due to some problems in design. So this is this building Alto Rio before the earthquake. It was built just 2 years before the earthquake. It was an apartment building, and this is after the earthquake. But still, it's difficult to believe, but 79 people survived this collapse. So what we can say for new buildings, modern codes provide seismic resistance if they are implemented in design and construction. So what is the potential problem? Review of design and control of construction. Earthquake-resistant design is not completely trivial, and some skills are necessary. And without review, things like which we show before can happen. I would like, in addition to that what I said about the present codes, I would like to emphasize something which is not very well known to general public. That is that the seismic code is mainly about saving lives, not buildings. So, for example, the aims of the European standard for earthquake-resistant structures called Eurocode 8, there are 3 aims. Human lives are protected, damage is limited, and structures important for civil protections remain operational. So please note, damage is limited, not damage is prevented. This is because of economic reasons. I will try to explain this by showing the diagram, load deformation diagram. In the case of in a usual situation, vertical loads, small wind load, and so, we are in this region, elastic region, that means no damage. But in the case of earthquake, we design for rare earthquakes, about 500 years return period. The probability of this event is 10% in 50 years, so relatively low percentage, relatively low probability. So how we design is for life safety, not for preventing of damage, for economic reasons, because it costs, earthquake-resistant design costs something. So, to demonstrate this, I will show a building from Chile, from the same earthquake in Santiago. From outside, it looks nice. But if we went to the basement, it was quite heavily damaged. And the building was evacuated, and of course, the owners and the tenants were not very happy. So, because of this, their tendency in most developed countries, like, for example, New Zealand, which they have a very bad experience with Christchurch earthquakes some years ago. So, the tendency is to decrease the damage, to change the design from life safety to less damage, but of course this costs money and it will take time, and not many countries can afford this. So now I will move to existing buildings, to old buildings. So I mean by existing buildings, buildings built without seismic codes or with outdated codes. We have already seen what happened in Haiti, And here is a picture from Turkey, Izmit earthquake, 1999. Very severe consequences. And this earthquake happened at the North Anatolian fault. Many severe earthquakes happened at this fault in last century, and the location of this earthquake was here. And Istanbul is here. Istanbul has 15 million inhabitants, about 1.5 million buildings, a huge number built without seismic resistance. This is one of the most seismically of cities with highest seismic risk in the world. What can be done? Unfortunately, not much. Here I will show fatality rates from earthquakes. This was a study to show a little bit how many fatalities we expect from different earthquakes, in dependence on the shaking intensity. And this diagram shows that, for example, if there are 10,000 people subjected to violent shaking, so the strongest earthquakes, out of 10,000 people, it is expected that 3,000 would die in Iran and only 3 in California. The difference is mostly from building quality and construction times. In California, many wooden houses. In Iran, mostly unreinforced masonry and stone houses. So it's interesting that Italy is quite high in this plot, but this is the reason because there are many unreinforced masonry houses. So a few words about Ljubljana, the city where we are today, my hometown. In Ljubljana, I would say a moderate earthquake, magnitude 6, was in 1895. Ljubljana is not a big city, and at that time was even much smaller, of course. But 10% of buildings were destroyed and removed. At that time, we lived in Austro-Hungarian monarchy, and in the next year, a building order was issued which required some measures for unreinforced masonry buildings. And people in Ljubljana still remember 40 years ago the earthquake, and when they built this building in the center of Ljubljana, we called it Nebotičnik, which means skyscraper. At that time, it was the tallest building in the whole region. It was a reinforced concrete structure, and they put a lot of emphasis on earthquake resistance, of course, according to the knowledge which was available at the time. And it's interesting that the designers, they used seismic isolation. So this is a cross-section of the building, and here this detail is written potresna rega, which means seismic dilatation. And as far as I know, this was one of the first engineering application of seismic isolation. Actually, I haven't found a more earlier one. Maybe there were some. But then, unfortunately, after the Second World War, there was a time of poor quality, quick construction, and without seismic codes. At that time, we had no seismic codes, and some buildings like that were built in Ljubljana. This was built in '59. 13-story unreinforced masonry building. You can see when the facade was removed, I took these pictures, and you can see this is unreinforced masonry. According to today's standard, it could be maybe 2 stories or something like that, 3 stories maximum, 13 stories. And there are several buildings like this in Ljubljana. No seismic resistance. And you can see even that in one building they built a story of the top in addition. So what to do with these buildings? No, these are apartment, private owners. Retrofit is expensive, and it's not only financial problem, it's a problem of logistic. People have to go out for the period of the reconstruction. So I'm afraid that this is a mission impossible. It was easier with a student dormitory. Owner was the state, and there was no problem of logistics. So this building was built in '63, demolished in 2004, and rebuilt in 2006. This is the easiest solution, of course, but not applicable everywhere. So we have another problem in Ljubljana. These are elementary schools built before '63. '63 is an important year because in '63 we got the first seismic code. There are 14 schools like this in Ljubljana, 25 in other towns, all the same architectural system, of course not seismic resistant. And this is one of these schools, 100 meters from the place where we are and 100 meters from the governmental palace. When children are concerned, we are especially sensitive. And what happened in Italy? In Italy, a school collapsed in 2002 in a small town in Italy. Half of the population, which was at that time in the school, died. So this was really a catastrophe. And actually, this event accelerated seismic retrofit of schools all over the world. For example, a very good example is Cyprus, Greek Cyprus. They, in the period of 10 years, they checked all of them, all of their buildings, 660 school buildings. Half of them they found to be okay, but the other half they either demolished and replaced by new ones or retrofitted. There is a program going on in California in several municipalities. Mandatory seismic retrofit ordinances have been implemented, and it is required to retrofit the most vulnerable buildings. These are unreinforced masonry buildings, these are wood frame soft story structures, and these are non-ductile concrete structures. So each property owner of vulnerable buildings received a so-called order to comply and is required to complete retrofit or demolish the building in 7 years. Of course, there are financial incentives, so favorable loans and subventions and things like that. So what is the situation now? 3 months ago, these so-called orders to comply have been issued for all the soft-story buildings that need seismic upgrades. 1,500 is already retrofitted and 6,400 in progress. So a few words about soft-story. Soft-story, I always told my students, this is enemy number 1 of seismic behavior. So this is a hotel in L'Aquila before the earthquake. Everybody who knows something about earthquake engineering knows that such a building cannot survive a strong earthquake. And this is what happened in the earthquake, and many people died here. So I could spend whole my presentation just by showing collapses of soft-story buildings. So soft-story buildings are built because of architectural requirements. And I put here only 2 of them, one in Japan and the other one in Turkey, and here used to be the first story. There are thousands of buildings like that. So this is enemy number 1. I will finish my examples with a retrofit of an unreinforced masonry building. So this is a building in Ljubljana, more than 100 years old, with wooden floors. What we did is a retrofit we put some ties from one facade to another facade in order to prevent walls to fall out of the plane. So actually, this happened to be my building where I live. And very soon after the earthquake, after this retrofit, an earthquake, moderate earthquake happened in Slovenia, and journalists came, and we discussed different things, and I mentioned that I retrofitted this building, and then the next day there was an article in the daily newspaper, Potres bo Pfeiffer hišo saniral, what means an earthquake will happen, Pfeiffer fixed the house. So, you know this joke, there will be very cold winter, Indians are preparing firewood like crazy. So let me conclude. Earthquake resistance of structure, this is the key element of seismic resilience. As far as new structures are concerned, codes are okay, but they have to be observed. Of course, they do not prevent damage, but the tendency is to minimize damage. Problem are old structures built before codes or built without codes. There a retrofit is needed. Of course, not everything can be retrofitted, but it's reasonable to start with schools and hospitals. So I will conclude my presentation with this cartoon. We should not rely on Superman. What is needed is an action. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor Peter Pfeiffer. And ladies and gentlemen, it's so nice to see your smiles in the audience. And now I'm honored to invite onto the stage our next keynote speaker, Professor Antonia Moropoulou. She will speak about novel, sustainable preservation of modern and historic buildings and infrastructure. Welcome. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Good morning, distinguished colleagues, guests, ladies and gentlemen. I'm honored by your invitation, Mr. President of the Slovenian Chamber of Engineers, Dean of the Faculty of Civil Engineering and Geodesy of the Ljubljana University, Mrs. President of the World Federation of Engineering Associations, representative of UNESCO, my colleagues from Greece and Cyprus that are here today. I have, first of all, to convey to you the greetings and the regards of the Greek engineers. I have the honor to be the President of the General Assembly of Greek Engineers, and we are here, we are present. As you know, today's built environment is in crisis, like the world and the socioeconomic situation is in crisis. We are coming at the end of the lifetime of the urban built environment because of the limited lifetime of the reinforced concrete bars, which are accounting more or less for 70 years in marine environment, and above 50 kilometers from the sea, Europe is a marine environment. At the same time, it is not by chance that the 40% of the construction activity is dedicated to maintenance, conservation, and rehabilitation of buildings. At the National Technical University of Athens, we are dealing with the science and engineering of these efforts, and we know very well that research and innovation are the background on which we have to found this joint effort. In our case, our experience in monuments preservation and concerning the monument rehabilitation, I'm going to present the Holy Edicule of the Tomb of Christ in Jerusalem. I might say that heritage is a lesson for all of us. Preserving heritage, we are talking with the monuments, and monuments are talking to us. And this is a lesson to learn concerning the preservation of our built environment and the resilience of our infrastructure. As I've heard, and I was very pleased with this note from the UNESCO representative, it is a conscience of today that interdisciplinarity, merging capabilities and know-how is the scientific basis in order to perform rehabilitation. Within this effort and the specific experience of the monument we dealt with, this unique monument is associated with communication, social awareness, and participation of humanity, which was enhanced and was necessary in this direction. The Church of the Holy Sepulchre in Jerusalem is a church where the crucifixion and the resurrection places are brought together. The Holy Edicule of the Tomb of Christ was a structure that from Constantine the Great passed through Byzantine, the Crusaders period, the Renaissance period, and the last restoration before ours, the one of Komnenos at 1810, and the Cyborium, which is actually the specific structure to protect the Tomb of Christ, went from the octagonal structure to a columned structure, the Cyborium actually, to the mausoleum of the 18th century, the Baroque one, which we delivered absolutely deformated and sustained by the English mandate at 1947 with iron beams in the cage form you can preserve, and which we delivered 1 year later in the form you can see. This project started with the invitation by the Greek Orthodox Patriarch Theophilos III, and this was the reason that on March 15 this venture started, because for security reasons to the pilgrimage, the Israeli authorities closed the Tomb of Christ to the people. I had the honor to comprise an interdisciplinary working team, Professor Kores, School of Architecture, Georgopoulos, School of Surveying Engineering, Spirakos and later Mouzakis from Civil Engineering, and me from Chemical Engineering, Material Science and Engineering for the protection of monuments, leading this team. The methodology of the research concerning documentation, diagnosis, and the proposals for the intervention were integrated concerning geometry, architecture, historic materials and structures, and of course, all this open to the dialogue with the three Christian communities. The deformation of the Holy Edicule was really a great problem, because they thought it was due to the rainfalls for decades after the Komnenos restoration from the open oculus of the dome of the rotunda of the Holy Sepulchre Church. As we later discovered, it was due to the rising damp from the underground area as well. But the formation was clear, and the iron beams were not capable to negate it anymore. Under these circumstances, and with the historical consent of the three Christian communities, the Greek Orthodox Patriarchate, the custody of the Franciscan Order of the Holy Land, and the Armenian Patriarchate, we undertook the responsibility upon our study to perform this work 200 years after another consent upon which Komnenos had restored the Holy Edicule. The interdisciplinary team performed the restoration, rehabilitation work on the basis of executive responsibility that I personally had, and supported this responsibility with scientific support to decision-making and continuous monitoring throughout the works. Of course, scientific coordination of such a type of work had really to address great challenges. Among others, the continuous pilgrimage and religious functions. They didn't cease, but only for the 60 hours that we opened the tomb of Christ. To preserve and highlight the values of a unique monument, and this within a limited time frame from Easter to Easter and less, because funding was not ensured. Our tool was the scientific support to decision-making, and the interdisciplinary team accounted for 50 members, while restorers and conservators and masons were no more than 12. The integrated coordination had to satisfy three goals: the structural integrity with compatibility and performance, the sustainability, and the revealing of values. Innovation was in the core of all this effort. The interdisciplinary project had been based on the 3D digital documentation that was a dynamic core space to integrate all informations, to merge and fuse all capabilities and know-how. Architects, surveying engineers, civil engineers, chemical engineers, restorers, conservators, information technologists and engineers, archaeometrists, archaeologists, historians of art were working together. And that was providing actually the basis for transdisciplinarity beyond the frontiers of engineering. Within the 3D digital environment, we were capable of performing continuous monitoring with non-destructive techniques to assess and evaluate our interventions in a way that we could optimize our redesign, if necessary, within real time on the scale of the monument. This innovative inspection of the non-visible layers of the edicule was really a major tool for the rehabilitation. You might see how the ground-penetrating radar permitted us to estimate where the holy rock is, where the masonry of the various periods was extending, and to design the necessary interventions in an accurate way to estimate materials at the 3D level of model we were working. And the geometric documentation, the materials characterization, permit us, along with the architectural documentation, to perform the structural assessment by the finite element models that were realistic ones and dynamic ones in a way that we would be able to select materials and structures, select materials for structural interventions in the time limit we had, of course, with a project planning that was very accurate and very strict. Compatible and performing materials were ensured by this integrated study, and that's a first step for sustainability. I remember 30 years ago to present in the Euro Parliament that if we have to sustain historic structures, we have to work with compatible materials, not with stronger materials. And that was the time that we started to abolish the strong materials, cement or resins, from retrofitting historic structures. So here we ensure breathability, thermohydric behavior, we do not induce anisotropy, we have adequate mechanical behavior, and we do not introduce soluble salts, but mainly we go to homogeneity, an homogeneous structural system. The iterative process of the main stages of rehabilitation was one that started with removing the slabs of the edicule, retrofitting the inside masonry, and removing the degraded mortars, unifying the structural system by grouting compatible grouts, injecting compatible grouts, resetting the columns, sustaining with titanium bolts and anchors the systems to be stuck together, assessing and evaluating the reset to the verticality and the performance of the structure according to its structural integrity in order to remove the iron beams and the cage that was keeping intact the edicule, cleaning, protecting, revealing the values, and delivering the edicule. For this reason, we had organized upon the Franciscan Gallery the conservation laboratory where the stones numbered were removed and brought and conserved. We had organized, beyond the Tomb of Christ, an interdisciplinary laboratory in order to monitor all the phases of the works. And the teams were working day and night. During the night in the Holy Edicule, so that the pilgrimage and the functions would not be seized, and during the day at the Latin Gallery. And the scientific team was uniting these two terms of the 24 hours, working continuously in Jerusalem and Athens. The implementation methodology is actually an innovative one from the point of view that this construction site was continuously open to the pilgrimage, that the funding was a crowdsourcing funded. We started with zero. We initiated the work with the World Monuments Fund and Mika Ertegun as a benefactor at the 1/3 of the cost, 3.5 million euros, with transparency uploading to the site of the Greek Orthodox Patriarchate all the costs. And we continued with the integrated management of the work, where the project owners committee, the three leaders of the Christian communities, were working With us in the steering committee, the interdisciplinary scientific team in green, and the construction site management team in blue, which all together were, from interface to interface, working together upon the basis of the scientific support by the assessment of the non-destructive techniques. Here you might see, for instance, how the assessment of effectiveness of the grounding process was advanced by entities in order to secure that the holy rock was consolidated and to ensure that the interface with the Crusaders' masonry or the Byzantine masonry would be unified. The process of the works was facilitated by decision-making made on site upon the indications for instance, here the colors of the infrared thermography were indicating where we had voids to continue with grouting, or the ground-penetrating radar permitted to assess that we had indeed consolidated the structures. That means the innovation of the non-destructive testing permitted on all phases, documentation, diagnosis, monitoring, assessment, and implementation to perform upon the set criteria, the whole intervention. At the end of the works, we had to ensure that this innovative methodology achieved the goals set: structural integrity, highlighting the values, sustainability. Of course, from innovative data capturing to innovative reconstruction, the joint mortar was the competence for the preservation of cultural heritage. When we assured, in comparison to the Freeman Report of the English Mandate 1947, on February 2017, that we diminished the deformations and that the deviations from verticality arrived to zero, and that the bearing efficiency of the homogeneous structure was responding to the earthquake risks of the area, we cut the iron beams and we emancipated the Tomb of Christ. The most important moment of this effort were the 60 hours when we opened the Tomb of Christ during grouting in order to protect it from irreversible intervention. That was a unique moment because after 7 or 5 centuries, according to the historic sources, the Tomb of Christ was opened at a period that we had at hand the high technology to study it and reveal its secrets. And non-destructive techniques permitted us, after a period of time that the energy disturbance of the atmosphere was coming to an equilibrium, permitted us to study the morphology of the burial monument, and by taking samples of the mortars that were connecting the slab upon the rock where the tomb was engraved, and the upper slab, the one we lifted, we were able to, through archaeometry, to estimate that it was Constantine the Great, the one who put the first slab, protected and revealed the Tomb of Christ, and that during all periods of restorations, after a sequence of destructions, of course, that means during the Byzantine, the Crusaders, the Renaissance period, we have the evidence of the presence of these restorations. That means the historic continuity of this unique monument was in front of our eyes, and it was ensured definitely by high-tech. Revealing the holy rock, the archetype material of the burial monument through opening a window was the first opportunity since centuries that pilgrims would see the holy rock, and revealing the frescoes was bringing the myrrh-bearers back to the burial monument, or restoring the dome, the timber structure, and revealing the moon, the sun, the rainbow, or the inscriptions, which were the martyrs of resurrection, or the fingertip of Komnenos in his last restoration 2 centuries ago, the cross of Komnenos, writing 15 October 1809, were revealing the values and the history of the monument as the cleaning interventions and the protection interventions, which enabled us at the end, in the digital infrastructure we constructed, to study the architectural evolution of the monument during the centuries. But concerning sustainability, a window is open to the future. Concerning sustainability, the risk assessment shows that the rising dam of the underground area is threatening this unique monument still. That was the reason that by delivering the monument at March 2017, we delivered the study to reveal the underground problem, which we could not do before. We did it, we studied while we were working. Here, through robots, ground-penetrating radar, electrical resistivity survey, electromagnetic probe systems, we revealed all the channels, tunnels, cisterns, all the places where the rainwater from the Christian Road 10 meters above was falling, and the sewage system of all the Holy Sepulchre was disposed underneath the Holy Rock. We, of course, geometrically documented this, and we found all the archaeological important structures from Adrianos or from Constantine the Great, and we studied a drainage and ventilation gallery which would underpin the rotunda area, the general area, with a peripheral piping network for sewage and rainwater disposal in order to negate the differential settlement of the Holy Rock, which would be a threatening and a risk. A multimodal sensoring was induced before delivering the Holy Edicule for thermohydric behavior, for seismic monitoring, and for verticality, for displacement from verticality. This work has the names of all the people. It's a collective effort that worked for it on all levels. And at the completion of the work, the ceremony organized by the 3 Christian communities was of ecumenic level, with all the diplomatic and political representatives of the conflagrated Middle East there. That was the major challenge, that this monument and this work were not only uniting Christianity, were uniting a world in crisis and in conflict. And social accessibility, bringing the world to the tomb of Christ, which was an outcome of a communication strategy and of the opening of the Tomb of Christ, broadcasted by the National Geographic Society, brought more than 2 billion people to kneel virtually in front of the Tomb of Christ, and the media of the world to refer to it in a continuous way. And the virtual exhibition based on advanced digital techniques in Washington 2017 and in Athens, Greece 2018, which is traveling now in spirit, the world is going to Cyprus. It has traveled by presenting the work to a European community as an exemplary restoration work at the year 2018, which was dedicated to cultural heritage, and now is opening horizons with Oxford, with Vatican, with all of the world for research, transdisciplinary research. I could say that the Tomb of Christ, within the 2 years we studied and we worked there, became an open monument to research and education. The status quo that did not permit other interventions, and UNESCO knows that very well, was open to ideas and the young people. Today, research is continuing, and we are performing the multi-layered data management and the fusion, of course, on the level of the platform we are developing to share this knowledge with the world. We started with a fragmented digital implementation of merging all the various disciplines' data. Today, this becomes a holistic approach, and it brings us to a digital-driven preservation of cultural heritage. Today's built environment is needing resilience modeling, and resilience modeling is not only a technical issue, it is a situation awareness issue. And we have to go to this end because we know now that towards a resilience integrated model, we have to include society. Assuring resilience means we have to ensure the feasibility of funding as well. And the strategic impact has to take into consideration the United Nations Agenda for 2030 for Sustainable Development and the UNESCO requirements in order to keep in the list of international of the World Heritage Monuments, the monuments that are listed. Finally, the challenge of interdisciplinarity and novelty is joining the challenge of inclusive growth. And the cities of our world, I'm speaking of my city, the medieval city of Rhodos, need an integrated approach, and this is the future. The research evolution is bringing us to circular economy, to preserve cultural heritage through its reuse, bridging private-public partnerships with social economy. Thank you very much.
Thank you very, very much. And now, ladies and gentlemen, let's move to China. I'm inviting onto the stage Professor Jenny J. Professor Jenny Jen will talk about development of tunneling technology in China over the past 40 years. And we can remember the Chinese proverb, a smile will gain you 10 more years of life. So let's smile.
Thank you very much. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. So my topic today is about the developments of tunneling over the past 40 years in China. So I would like to share with you about the outlines of tunneling in China and challenges and achievements over the past 40 years and the future developments. In the end, I would like to make a summary. So regarding the tunneling in China over the past 40 years, I would like to share you the numbers and the progress. I think maybe everybody knows China's 40 years of reform and opening up to the outside world has brought huge changes to this country since 1978, including China's booming economy, huge investment in infrastructure, of course, including a dramatic increase in Chinese people's income, important, and of course, including dramatic developments in tunneling. That's what I'm going to talk about. So here you can see some numbers by the end of last year. So China has built around 36,000 kilometers transit tunnels, including railway, highway, and metro. But no includes the tunnels for other purposes, like water transfer, utilities, and other purposes. And at the same time, around 20,000 kilometers tunnels under construction, and another 20,000 kilometers tunnels to be built in the near very future. So here, I would like to share with you the slide. This slide shows the numbers over the past 40 years. So you can see most of the tunnels, existing tunnels, were built over the past 40 years, especially in the past 20 years. It's quite challenging for me to summarize the progress of tunneling over the past 40 years because a lot of things happened, but I would like to give you some keywords. So keywords number one is about amount. So huge amount of tunnels have been built, around 45,000 kilometers for transit tunnels and other purpose tunnels. Especially in the past 5 years, a lot of tunnels have been put into operation, including railway, highway, and metro. And keyword number two is about innovations. A lot of innovations have been made on the investigation, design, construction, and manufacture. So because of the time limit, so I cannot go to very detail, but keyword number three is about the challenging. Lots of challenge projects had to be built, including long, deep, large, high, and very compressed tunnels. So I'd like to share with you the challenges and achievements over the past 40 years. A lot of tunnels, long tunnels, deep tunnels, large tunnels, high tunnels have been built. Regarding the long tunnels, so this is the current longest tunnels in China. So the longest railway, longest highway, and the longest water transfer tunnels. So I think the longest one in the world at the moment, I think it could be 283 kilometers long tunnel. It's for water transfer. Yeah, this is single tunnel, not many tunnels together, only single tunnel. It's quite long. I think for the challenges building these long tunnels, I think including uncertainty of geology and the long construction time because the tunnel is so long, as well as the disaster prevention during operation. So I will share you how we deal with these challenges. So first one, we use geology prediction during tunneling because it's quite challenging to know exactly the geology before excavation. So it's very important, and now it's a compulsory procedure to do geology prediction during tunneling. For the conventional method, that means drill and blast, it's quite easy because you can do from the excavation phase, but during tunneling by TBM, by machine, it's quite challenging because you cannot see the excavation phase. So in this case, we need a special geology prediction system. We developed two different systems. One is we call it induced polarization method, and we have the sensors installed in the cutter head and also in the backcut system. So we can detect the geology ahead the TBM automatically. And another system is no any sensor installed in TBM because some TBM manufacturers, they are not happy to have extra sensors to be installed in the TBM. So this system without any sensors in the cutter head. But we use the vibration when TBM cutting rock, the vibration as a signal. And then we can detect the geology ahead. So both this system has been used quite a lot in different projects in China. And the other solution is about repeat construction. Actually, there's no single solution for different long tunnels, but I would like to share you two cases. One is Wushaolin tunnel. It's 20 kilometers long, 2 parallel tubes. Because this tunnel was the bottleneck of a very, very busy railway. So that means the earlier operation, the better. So we use 13 inclined shafts, different inclined shafts, to speed up the construction time. So the construction time was shortened from 5 years to 2.5 years. So after 2.5 years, these 20 kilometers tunnels already finished and put into operation. That's due to we use more assets. Another case is Dahuofang water transfer tunnel. This is an 85 kilometers long tunnel. And the geology here is very poor, very fractured, a lot of groundwater. But this is quite shallow in this part. And in the rest of the part, the rock is good, but it's very deep. That means it's difficult to have more assets, to have more pilots. So as a result, we use string and blast convention method for this part with more inclined shafts. And this we use 3 TBMs, each for 20 kilometers. So the construction time for the excavation only took 3 years. And the maximum advance rate by 1 TBM is more than 1,000 meters per month. Regarding deep tunnels, of course, many deep tunnels have been built. I think the major challenges for deep tunnels, including high ground stress, heavy water inflow, and geothermal problems. I will share you 2 cases. So this is a Jinping Stage 2 hydropower station. I think many of you already know this project. It was very challenging, and there were 7 very deep and very long tunnels. And the maximum depth is 2.5 kilometers deep. So it's very deep. During the construction, very serious rock burst, as well as water inflows with very high water pressure happens. You know how much the pressure? It's around 10 megapar. That means the groundwater is more than 1,000 meters. So it was very challenging. So you can see from the picture, and sometimes it's very difficult to deal with these water inflows with such high pressure. And sometimes the water inflow from here is so strong, and you can't stop it with a single solution. So we find we drill more boreholes to release the pressure. So because that's the faults, and this is the major water inflow, so more boreholes to release the pressure, and then you can stop here by grouting one by one. And finally, you can stop the water inflow. And this is more or less the same philosophy. Of course, for the deep tunnels, rock burst is quite common. And for this project, we have around 11 kilometers tunnels have this kind of problem. So we use repeatedly maintaining the surrounding rock and blasting for stretch release, as well as strengthen support to maintain to adopt the deformation and to maintain the structure. And finally, that project was completed finally and put into operation in 2014. Another case, the deep tunnel is Gaoli Gongshan. This one is under construction at the moment. So you can see here, this part, the geology is quite good, and this part is quite challenging, it's quite complicated. So we use 2 TBM for this part and conventional method for this part. The major challenges for this tunnel, many challenges. One of them is the geothermal problem. So you can see here, actually in this area, there are a lot of hot spring. How hot? You can imagine. It's nearly boiling water. It's more than 90 degrees. So you can use it for cooking without problem. So, but for tunneling, it's very challenging, you know. And but luckily, in tunnel, the temperature was it's hot, but not so hot. But it's still a big problem for tunneling. So we use, of course, ventilation and cooling during the construction. And also we use grouting to stop the water, because the groundwater is coming very deep. The very hot water is coming from very deep. So we stopped it by grouting. And also we consider the durability of the shotcrete and lining. During the construction, if the temperature is very hot, then usually the quality of the concrete, the shotcrete, should be a problem. So we need to sort it out. And this tunnel is now under construction. Regarding large tunnels, we use different methods to build large tunnels, including conventional method, TBM, immersed tube, etc. So I will share you several interesting projects. This one is a Hong Kong, Zhuhai, Macau immersed tube. It's the very largest immersed tube at the moment. So it's linking Hong Kong, Zhuhai, and Macau. So there's a video film, a short video film I would like to share you. So, but I don't know how to do it. Okay. Done. There's a voice. Excuse me.
Connecting Hong Kong and Macau at west, and its total length is 55 kilometers. The island and tunnel engineering construction consists 2 artificial islands with areas 100,000 square meters of each, and one 6.7 kilometers long immersed tunnel, which is so far the only one deeply buried immersed tunnel, as well as the longest highway immersed tunnel in the world.
Okay. So because the video is quite long, but I just cut a very short part. So this immersed tube is linking by 2 artificial islands, so around 6 kilometers long, and it's quite big one. It's around 38 meters wide in 11.4 meters height. And this one was already finished and open to traffic last October. And this project was the major tunneling project of ITA last year. And at the same time, we have another similar project under construction at the same time. And so you can see this is a Hong Kong, Zhuhai, Macau project. I just show you. And this is the Shenzhen Zhuhai corridor. Yeah, that one. I'm sorry, this is not so, this one. This is Shenzhen, Zhongshan, this is Guangzhou. So this is another corridor under construction. Also combination by bridges and immersed tube. That's another artificial island. And this one is even longer and bigger than Hong Kong, Zhuhai, Macau immersed tube. And it's a steel chain. It's not a concrete structure, it's a steel structure. So you can see it's even bigger. It's 46 meters wide, 9 meters bigger than Hong Kong, Zhuhai, Macau. And 4 lanes for each. It's under construction. It's also quite challenging. We also use conventional methods to build large tunnels. So here you can see it's Beijing and Zhangjiakou. These are for the high-speed railway, built especially for the 2022 Winter Olympic Games in Beijing and Zhangjiakou. So there's a very long tunnel here, and just under the famous Great Wall. It's around 12 kilometers. And in this very long tunnel, there's a very big, it's a very big underground station for high-speed underground railway station under construction. And it's very big with a very building area about 36,000 square meters. And the construction time for this railway is 3.5 years. Oh, sorry, this picture is no, right? So you can see that that's the plan view about this station and the profile. So this is for the tunnel. The level, the bottom level is for the train, and inbound corridor and outbound corridor. So 3 levels. So totally there's 78 tunnels under this station. This is for the large span. And this is under construction, and this is after excavation. And we also use TBM to build large tunnels. So this is the case under the Yangtze River. So also 2 tubes, but it's a combination with road tunnel and the metro tunnel. So on the top is 3 lanes for road, and underneath is for metro, line number 7. So this is in Wuhan. And this project already opened to traffic last October. And at the same time, we have another similar project now under construction in Jinan city. Of course, for this kind of design, we need to optimize the use of the space, because the bigger of the tunnel, it will be more expensive. So we need to optimize the use of the space. We use this for the smoke extraction for the road, and we use this for the smoke extraction for the metro tubes extraction. So we need to optimize the use of the cross-section. Regarding the tunnels at high altitudes, I will show you 2 projects. One is for railway, and the other one is for highway. So this is a Zhuhai Tibet railway. I think this is the longest and the highest railway, because the length of this is 1,100 kilometers long, but 960 kilometers is about altitude of 4,000 meters. And the highest point is more than 5,000 meters. And a lot of challenges. So you can see this is, I think this could be the highest railway tunnel, because the altitude is nearly 5,000 meters. And the construction time is only 5 years. Regarding the tunneling at very high altitudes, I think the major problems, including freezing and soaring, and also habitat problems. At the high altitudes, so lack of oxygen, so even the machine, even the equipment is not so efficient. So you have to use electrified equipment as much as possible. And for the diesel power equipment, sometimes the efficiency is not so good enough. So also we need to consider about the health of the laborers, because lack of oxygen. So we also use the oxygen generating station to supply enough oxygen. It was very challenging. Another case is a highway tunnel. So you can see the blue one was the old highway, and the red one is the new solution with tunneling solution. So it was so difficult, because the road was so dangerous, especially in winter time, deep slope. But in summertime, debris flows, landslides, it was so difficult. So it was several accidents. due to the very critical situation. But now it's very easy by tunneling solution. Only in 10 minutes, 9 kilometers, a very comfortable situation, and sea level is reduced from 5,000 to 4,300. So I think it's for tunneling. I think tunneling improves people's life and also save people's life. And I would like to share you some complex tunnels, but I don't think we have time to go to detail. So a lot of tunneling in complex geology, including karstic, thermal gas, squeezing, flowing sand, losses, etc. And we also built quite a lot of tunnels in challenging urban areas, including underground interchanges. We use a lot of interchanges, but usually it's bridge interchanges. But we built several underground interchanges and other tunneling in very sensitive grounds and very sensitive buildings. So regarding the future development, I would like to share you two very challenging projects. One is Tibetan Strand Railway. It's around 1,700 kilometers long. So you can see, the geology is very challenging, and 80% will be in tunnels. So the challenging for this project, including very complicated geology, faults, seismic, and thermal forest, landslide, and other geology disasters. And it's, the condition, the weather condition is so difficult, because the altitude. So there will be a lot of long, deep, and high tunnels to be built. So I will show you that's some of the long tunnels. The longest one is 42 kilometers, and several other tunnels. So I think the total length of the tunneling could be around 1,000 kilometers. So another project is undersea tunnel, linking Dalian and Yantai. It will be 123 kilometers undersea tunnel. Also very challenging because the geology here also complicated and seismic area, and it's so long. So we need to consider how to ventilate it. We need to consider how to prevent from disaster, etc. So these two projects will be built in the future. So finally, great achievements have been made on tunneling over the past 40 years in China. I think these achievements would not have been possible without knowledge sharing and experience sharing and even encouraging for the successful projects internationally. While the development of tunneling technology in China also contributes to our international tunneling industry. Not only in China, I think in other parts of the world, I think we have more challenging projects to come. So I think we International Tunneling Association and we International Engineering Society, we need to deal with these challenges with even longer, even deeper, even larger, even more complex tunneling projects together. Thank you. I would like to thank you for your attention. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And now I'm inviting onto the stage Mr. Mark Coleman. Welcome. He will talk about Crossrail, a case study in BIM and asset management. The floor is yours. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'd like to thank the organisers for inviting me here to talk about Crossrail and speak in front of such an esteemed group of people within the construction industry, engineers, and I'd like to talk about Crossrail and give a case study in BIM. So our BIM strategy, how we used it to increase the efficiency of Crossrail. We're going to first of all have a brief overview of Crossrail, just have a look at the complexity of Crossrail project, which was built under the City of London. Then we'll have a look at Crossrail Bim Basics, so how we approached BIM and our strategy. We'll have a look at how we created our common data environment, which was key to our BIM strategy, and then how we used the data that we collected. So Crossrail is a project that runs from east to west across London. In the central section, which runs right under the centre of London, there were 42 kilometres of tunnel drilled. This will eventually lead to 200 million more passenger journeys a year. And these stations are huge when compared to existing London Underground stations. So we're often finding with a lot of the stations, the Crossrail station would span 2 existing London Underground stations. There's going to be 24 trains per hour in the central section when it's finished, and it will increase London's transport capacity by 10%. In the design and construction, we've used 250,000 models, including 3D models. We've got 5 million documents kept in our document management system, 1 million assets and equipment across the project, 500 million GIS features, and GIS was a central part of our BIM strategy. And the total cost is now over £17 billion. So these are just a few quick glimpses at construction. That's the canopy at Paddington. These are the escalators going in at Bond Street. This is a huge app ceiling at Farringdon Station, which is a very complex concrete structure to install. And this is a typical platform. This is at Tottenham Court Road, but we were keeping all platforms consistent so that our passengers have a very consistent experience as they travel on Crossrail. The size of the stations resulted in huge pieces of equipment needed to be installed, and this was a very challenging thing to install them in very congested construction environments. Also, we had artwork across the Crossrail project. This was all privately funded, so over £2 million worth of privately funded artwork at many of the stations, if not all. And a whole new fleet of trains. So these are state-of-the-art trains with new software on board that had to deal with several different signalling systems. So across Crossrail, you've got the central area, then you've got east and west, you've also got the spur going down to Heathrow. Each of these has a different signalling system, and each of those signalling systems needs to be spoken to by the train. So these trains have been extremely challenging, are an ongoing challenge for Crossrail. So project complexity. The bill went through Parliament back in 2005 when we were given the go-ahead to start Crossrail. The budget was fixed here at £15.9 billion. As construction started and as the design developed, this increased to 17.8, but then of course the government came in and had a review of that and dropped it to 14.8. As the construction has continued and due now to complications, you may have heard that we're now delayed delivering Crossrail, the price is looking like going back up to 17.6 billion. Also, there's massive contractual complexity. So each of these contracts across Crossrail need to be able to use the information that other contracts produce. So we needed to be absolutely sure of the reliability of the information that we were asking for and that was being delivered, so that each contract could use the information that other contracts were providing, and they could know where to get it and rely on that information. So the construction complexity. This shows Liverpool Street Station. These are existing London Underground stations. That's the Circle Line, the Central Line and the Northern Line. And then there's the Crossrail station in the middle of it. So as you can see, Crossrail spans 2 existing London Underground stations, and this is in the heart of the business district in London, with huge skyscrapers, deep piles and a very challenging construction. This also shows a small video showing the interface with those different utilities and existing infrastructure. So you can see the existing line here. This is our TBM coming through here, and this is existing LU infrastructure. So these tunnels, as I say, are 42 kilometres long, 21 kilometres each, so there's 2 tunnels. And the distance between the tunnels, the existing tunnels there and the piling there was less than a metre each side. And when you're dealing with that length, the accuracy of the data that you need to programme those TBMs was again very challenging. So also the physical scale and complexity of the Crossrail project is replicated by the scale of our virtual world. And this is where we come into BIM. So not only do we have all the construction assets, the physical assets, we also have digital assets, and these are just as important. So we have various systems, various documents, drawings, relationships, and relationships is hugely important. Can you go from one bit of information to another bit of information seamlessly? So effectively, we were building 2 railways. This is Canary Wharf, which is built, and that's the digital replica. Also, we had to think about who we were giving our data to. So not only did we need the data that we were collecting to be reliable amongst our supply chain, but also we needed to think how we're going to deliver that data onto our stakeholders. So we've got Network Rail, RFL, which is Rail for London, London Underground, and London Underground at TCR. So how are we going to pass over all the information that we've collected about our assets so that they can realistically use them in whatever asset management system they have? And this was a lesson learned perhaps by Crossrail in that next time we would probably hand over our entire asset management system rather than have our own. We used Eclipse, and then the end user putting those into things like Maximo, just to save cost at the end of the project. So the Bim Basics. What we needed to do is have a defined end game for all our data. So this starts right at the beginning about what type of data you're going to collect, how you're going to collect it, all the individual attributes associated with that data. You need to know how to classify your assets and data structure. And this is all procurement critical. So right at the beginning, we wrote into contracts with our supply chain exactly the type of data that we needed from them. We prescribed where they were going to put it, how they were going to put it there, so that everyone could rely on that. And that brings us on to the common data environment, which I'll speak about shortly. That's our electronic document management system and our electronic CAD management system. And this had to be used by everyone. Again, this was contractual. And it was owned and managed by us. Also, we needed to leverage technology. And by that I mean we needed to use a single database that could relate to various types of software, if need be. Going back to what is BIM, I think everyone has a different idea of what BIM is. For Crossrail, for ourselves, it was managing data. The data environment, where data is being put, so the CDE again, data integrity, the reliability of data, is it consistent? Collaboration, can everyone access that one source of data? Also using technology to increase the power of that data, and thinking about the whole asset life cycle. So not just thinking about design, construction, but also thinking about how are the operators, how are the maintainers going to use this information. Which brought about new processes and new cultures of work for our supply chain. So again, we needed to engage the supply chain to make them understand why we were doing what we were doing. If necessary, we needed to train them in various software, various processes. And this was very important because it's very easy to come across resistance to BIM strategies and to general change. So it's very important to educate your supply chain if you want them to follow what you've contractually asked them to do. This graph just shows that, again, lots of people think BIM is 3D models, and in the concept and design stage, 3D models are very important, but the importance of them lessens and the data collected against assets increases. So at the end of the project, it's really the data against those assets that is the most important thing. So creating our common data environment. This is a little reminder of the old world. So all different disciplines speaking to each other separately, keeping their information in silos, not really giving people stuff in real time. So you would receive stuff that was old often. So with a common data environment, we kept all our data in one single area and everyone would access that. Again, contractually, we made them access it and all their information went in there in real time and could be accessed by everyone in real time. So 90% of our data was in 3 linked databases. GIS mapping, which was hugely important to Crossrail, effectively a Google Maps of the whole Crossrail project. But you could go into that map, you could go into a station such as Farringdon, you could go into a room in Farringdon, you could find the asset information associated with that room. That would then lead you to EB, which is where we kept all our documentation, our reports, contracts, health and safety documents, all the drawings that came out of our CAD. And then we kept all of our CAD in ProjectWise and nowhere else. So anyone working on the Crossrail project needed to work within ProjectWise in real time, so that anyone changing a model and issuing that model and sharing it for others to see, people would see it instantly. And all these databases are linked, so that they have relationships between them, and you can go from a model in the ProjectWise and instantly know where to find information about that in EB. So this resulted in effectively our digital end state here. So this is, if we look at an asset breakdown, this is a facility, in this case a station, and in this case Farringdon Station. If we go further down to a primary functional unit, which is an escalator, from that escalator, that information about that will be held in the GIS, it will be held in 3D models, it will be held in as-built drawings, which are PDFs. You'll have health and safety records about that, maintenance concepts, test certificates, etc. And if you break that down even further to handrails, for instance, or stairs, or motors, each of these will have an operations and maintenance manual associated with it. So what we've created is you could start with the GIS, your Google map of Crossrail, and very quickly drill down into how to maintain a handrail on an escalator at Farringdon Station. So how did we use this data in construction? We again prescribed how people needed to deliver their 3D data. Everything on Crossrail was contractually in 3D, and drawings were cut from that 3D data. So everyone who was working within ProjectWise would see each other's 3D data in real time. And that's all about space management. So it's using 3D models to coordinate, and it was very important for us to be specific about the file format. So everyone working within ProjectWise, contractually again, we made them work in a specific file format, specific versions of a specific file format, so that every person's 3D model would automatically fit within everyone else's 3D model, all geospatially correct. And what we learnt as well is that we needed to insist on regular model updates. So some people would be working away on their model and might not share it for a year and a half, and other people are working on old data. So to have, again, written into contracts, which is something we didn't do, but we've learnt from that, is to insist on regular model updates. And also smart construction. So here we have a train going through one of the tunnels. Obviously, lots of equipment needs to be installed in these tunnels, walkways, CMS, fire mains. A huge amount of manual work would be required to drill the holes necessary for all this equipment. So each of the tunnels was scanned. This scanned data was then fed into a digital format. All the locations of all the drilled holes were then inputted, and this machine rolled along and drilled the holes exactly where they needed to be, which made the job obviously extremely efficient, accurate, and far, far quicker. We also insisted on project dashboards, which are often forgotten on projects, so that there is great visibility across the project of what other projects are doing, and also visibility up and down the supply chain. So there would be weekly, monthly dashboards showing the state of construction across each project, and also Crossrail itself produced these. So using data for asset management, we formulated an asset information management plan, which again was instructed to contracts, which they had to follow contractually. And this would define our overall approach to asset management, and it would list key supporting documents so that people knew what we expected an asset to be. So for example, I could call this a glass, someone else could call it a container, someone could call it a cup. I could say it's half full, you might say it's half empty, I don't know, but in Crossrail we had to tell people exactly what we expected an asset to be. So we would specify in AD4's asset data dictionaries what each asset was, what type of attributes to collect against it, so that everyone was clear across contracts and across disciplines what assets we expected to collect. And again, this was written into our contract clauses. So these are the asset data dictionaries, and they define the types of assets of interest to us, and this covered every single asset that could be installed across the Crossrail project, from pumps to walls. And we would hand over to our contractors spreadsheets which covered all the attributes that we wanted to be collected against every single type of asset. And those spreadsheets would be consistent across the project, and they'd be fed back to us, and then we would then input into our asset information management system, so that we can have reliable and consistent information across the project. So handing over into operations and maintenance. So we've talked about our common data environment. Everyone is feeding into this. All individual pieces of information lie in here. But we have different clients and we have different stakeholders, each requiring different types of information. So for instance, London Underground would require certain information that we would be able to take from our common data environment to hand over to them. RFL might require different information. It might be overlapping, but we can pick and choose from the common data environment because everything in there is consistent, and we're not having to go to various areas to find the information that we need. So, lessons that we learnt. Firstly, we learned that the best innovators in BIM were actually the best performers. So that's a very encouraging, practically, for the benefits of BIM. And we were finding contracts that were willing to engage with us and work towards a BIM solution actually performed better as a contract. So things we found were, in terms of our asset collection, we needed to define assets, as I talked about in the asset data dictionaries, very, very clearly, because lack of consistency, we found out very early on, causes trouble. We've also found that contractors release asset data as late as they can. They're busy building the station, and collecting data about what they've built is not necessarily their priority, but it needs, again, to be written into the contracts so that they can understand the benefits of releasing that data. So for processes like maintenance and operation, it's not just about building the stations. These stations will be around for 100 years, and it's far more important the data that we hand over at the end of design and construction. Also, again, maintainers need some asset data early for training, especially on projects like this with new trains and new software. So next time, we'll create and agree an asset data dictionary even earlier. You may have heard that Crossrail 2 is happening, which will be going from north to south of London, and that's what they're doing. They're building a complex asset data dictionary early. And we need to collect that asset data progressively, not wait till the very end and then try to collect it. Collect it as early as possible. And as I mentioned earlier, we'd hand over our asset information systems in their entirety, not just the data, so that it was easily brought in by our clients. The general BIM lessons learned. So again, data is the most valuable resource on our project, and it's owned by us. So it's in a common data environment. We know what's there. We can look at it any time. And everyone knows that we can, and everyone knows that other people can look at it any time. And it's very difficult to hide behind incorrect data or hold it somewhere that other people can't find it. We need to establish our requirements very early on, which goes again along with what information you need to collect about your assets. Structure the data with the end use in mind. So there's no point collecting all this data and then handing over an enormous great container full of bits of data that have no relationship to each other to a maintainer who can make no use of it. So if you know that this data is going to end up with an operations and maintenance team, then you need to be asking those and thinking about how they're going to use it and what's useful for them right at the very beginning. You need a good and clear asset breakdown structure and classification so that everybody understands it and agrees with it and complies with it and sees the benefit of it. And relational databases, so databases that speak to each other so that you can go to one to find information about the other and then from there go to the other. It's very important. And to become data-centric, which is the common data environment. Beware of data interoperability. So if you've decided that it is okay for people to use different software, for instance, High Speed 2, a rail project in England at the moment, they're allowing people to use their own software, but they have to be mindful that the data they collect will be able to be used by everyone else. Crossrail chose to prescribe exactly what software people used to get rid of that problem. Beware of being led by IT and software. So IT will always tell you we can't do that, or we can only do that, or we don't like that. So you need to decide what your requirements are at the beginning, and IT need to support that. And of course, people don't like change. The world is changing now, and BIM is becoming more and more important, and people are understanding the benefits of it. But even so, especially as you go further down the supply chain to smaller companies, manufacturing companies, they've worked a certain way for a very long time, and it's very difficult and costly for them to adopt BIM sometimes. So it's up to you as a client to instruct them and to give them the support that they need. So finally, all of the information I've talked about can be found on that website. I don't know if these presentations are available, but I'm happy for you to take this presentation away. And Crossrail in numbers, just to finish off. So it's 17.8 billion cost in the end, over 4 million documents in EB, 468 assets that are being defined so far against the ones that have been installed. Almost 500,000 drawings so far, all the CDE users and the construction contracts, and it would have all been much harder without BIM. So the very last slide, this is, I don't know whether any of you have heard of Ray Kurzweil, who works for Google as an engineer there, and he has theories which he calls the singularity. And this is all to do with the rate of change of computing power. So at the moment, computing power is progressing more each hour than it did in its first 90 years. So as we see here, the graph of computer power, and this is calculated by by calculations per second that you can buy for $1,000. So back in the 1900s, you wouldn't buy very many calculations for $1,000. As we head up into the current age now, in 2015, the amount of calculations a computer could do for $1,000 surpassed the brain power of a mouse. That didn't mean it was cleverer than a mouse, it just means it could calculate more things than a mouse's brain could. In 2023, if the current trend continues, it will be more calculations than a human brain. And in 2045, Ray Kurzweil predicts that it will surpass the equivalent of all human brains on the planet. So in the construction industry, we need to be mindful of this and realise that technology is something that we can embrace and something that can really change the lives of not only us who use it as engineers and designers, but also the people who we're building for. So thank you very much. It was all for her. It was her. It's called the Elizabeth Line. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And now, dear guests, do you maybe have any questions? Our keynote speaker will answer if you want. Otherwise, I can teach you some Slovene words if you want. Would you like to learn some Slovene words? Yes, which one? I love you. I think that's very nice, and I love you in Slovenian is Ljubim te. Can you repeat? Oh, thank you very much. I love you too. Do we have the microphone, please? Imamo, prosim, mikrofon. Bom hostesi hvaležna, če nam ga prinese. I think it will be nice to know where you come from and how would we say some words in your language? We will get the microphone. Thank you. So, excuse me, may I ask you, where are you from?
I am from Palestine.
Palestine?
Yes.
Oh, it's a very nice country.
And I speak Serbo-Croat.
Zaista.
That's why I asked you.
Serbo-Croatian. Volim te.
Volim te.
And how would you say I love you in your language?
أنا بحبك.
أنا بحبك. Thank you. May I ask you, where are you from?
Italy.
Italy. Ti amo is I love you in Italy. Yeah. And how we would say welcome, benvenuti.
Benvenuti.
Oh, thank you. May I say welcome to you too? Where are you from, mister?
France.
France. Bienvenue.
Bienvenue.
Bienvenue. Thank you. And you?
Lebanon.
Lebanon. And how would we say welcome in your language?
Ahla wa sahla.
Halab salad. Thank you very much. And may I ask you, where are you from?
Slovenia.
Slovenia. Can you help us with teaching Slovenian words?
Which one?
Which one? Which one would you like to learn? I think you would like to learn how to say bon appetit. Yes, it's dober tek. And I think it's really time for lunch in the lobby. After lunch, we will continue with the sections 3 in hall E12, and section 5 will be in hall M1. Section 6 will be in Kosovel Hall. Thank you very much. Enjoy the lunch.
Seveda, si jih ne moreš zadržati tako. A boš tam ali greva tja vrač? Pa da moram ti odpeti, peva rač sobo. Ti moš pozdraviti, aha, pa pejva, čakaj. Ja, čakaj, bom jaz. Evo.
Hvala zelo.
Ja, prosim lepo. Prav, se vidimo, a ne?